Hey guys, welcome back to Talk Time with Tandem. I'm Max, one of the founding engineers here. Today we thought it'd be a good idea to kind of do a little talk about the state of hardware on the market, what it looks like in terms of the availability of the hardware that you have, and kind of walk through the different time periods, what it looked like in the past, what it looks like now, and what it means for the future. So we'll start with what it looked like a few years ago. You know, back in 2018, a lot of the emphasis in this field was on training, model training, and it was very ML heavy. There were not a lot of options in terms of the companies making the hardware, and as you can imagine, NVIDIA dominated the field. And honestly, there were only a few actual models of GPUs that were being used to actually do these workflows. Some of the more common ones were T4s, A6000s, and V100s. OpenAI actually trained GPT-3 on V100. Okay, so fast forward a few years. Now, as you can see, the middle column is much more populated, not only in the types of hardware, but also the companies that are making the hardware. I'll read this out from my computer because I have it in front of me. But of the companies on this list, we have NVIDIA, Intel, Cerebras, AMD, Huawei. OpenAI just last week announced their new chip, Jalapeno. TPUs from Google, Rebellion's Trainium from AWS, and Etched actually came out of stealth last week as well as a more niche, you could say, chip, although their contracts are not niche at all. But what does this mean? Okay, so within every single company, you have their GPUs that you use. You know, NVIDIA, I listed the popular ones here, but you have their H200s, A100s, B200s, H100s, right? AMD has their own, Google TPUs has their own, AWS has their own. So the choice is very plentiful. And the way all of these operate, what they're designed for, how they're used, varies not only by the company making them, but also by the model of the GPU. You know, some workflows are much better done and designed for a certain type of GPU. So what does this mean for the way we actually train models and run inference now? Well, all this is leading to is a future which is heterogeneous. You know, I'll give you an example. AWS internally uses a mix of Trainium and Cerebras between prefill and decode for their API offerings. Anthropic trained Claude fully on TPUs from Google, but the way they deploy the models is actually spread across a different type, not a different, I should say, a varied type of hardware across different clouds, right? You know, you see trade wars because of geopolitics, all the open source models coming overseas from Asia, DeepSeek, for example, they developed their own sort of hardware as well as software on top of that hardware to train their models. All of this is to say that the future is heterogeneous. And the reason for this is two reasons. So if you are a large enterprise, you know, perhaps the biggest, the chance that you will get a set of, 100 or 200 of a certain type of hardware, sure, right? But if you're anybody else and you want, let's say, 100 H100s and you want it from AWS, the chance you're going to get it is slim to none, right? What does the real world actually look like? Well, you'll probably have access to some H200s in one region. You'll probably have some access to A100s in a different region. Perhaps, a few years ago, not a few years ago, but let's say for the sake of the example, you bought some B200s and you have an on-prem capacity, right? Oh, but say, you have some TPUs from GCP that you have access to, and you have a model that you need to deploy. The capacity and the resources that you have are limited, and they're heterogeneous. So the way you actually connect all the hardware that you own in a distributed way to actually run the models that you want to run and support the infrastructure that you have is a huge emphasis. So all of this is to say that, the future column, if I was making this video in 6 months per se, would only be longer than the current column right now. And the state of the market will only become more heterogeneous, not the other way around. So the way you actually utilize this hardware and the way you actually work with the software that's built on top of the individual pieces of GPUs is very important, and that's the challenge that we're working with, is how do you actually distribute workloads in a smart way that utilizes all the hardware available to you in the best fashion. We hope this was a general good overview of what the market looks like, and we will see you in the next one. Thank you.